Hi, in this video I'll give a brief introduction to the GSA plugin and then try to open an existing model. So if we click on the GSA tab, we can see those different subcategories that we have available. First off, we have model. In here we have components to create and work with existing models, as well as save models from Grasshopper to GSA. Second up, we have properties. This is the metadata, so sections, materials, 2D properties. After that, we have geometry. This is the more interesting objects. We have 1D, 2D, 3D elements and members, and we can also create supports in here. Then we have loads, beam loads, face loads, gravity loads, node loads, as well as grid area loads. Then the analysis tab. We have the analysis component, which can be used to also assemble a model and run the analysis inside Grasshopper. We have components to create tasks and cases. Under results, we have the ability to pick results from an existing model, as well as looking at contours results, getting them displayed inside Rhino viewport. And then the rest of the components can be used to extract result values, so displacements and forces, strain energy, and so on. Finally, we have parameters. So these are GSA Grasshopper parameters that links between a GSA object and a Grasshopper object. So to explain a little bit more what these are, I think it would be good if we try open an existing model. So I start off by picking the open model component. And this component asks for a file name and path input, and it will output a GSA model parameter. So that's already the first parameter up here, a complete model. So I can both input a string here, but I can also use this button. So if I click the open here, it will open a Windows window for me to select from a file. I downloaded one of the sample files here that I want to use, and I can click open here. This will then automatically create a text panel with the file path, and it will open the model, and we can see that it's been passed into one of the parameters. This parameter can't really do anything in itself, but it can be used to pass around these objects. So I'm going to delete that again. So if you want to have a look at what's inside a model, we can use some of the get components that we find under the model tab. So the most interesting one is the get geometry. It asks for a GSA model input. So if we plug that in there, you can see that it has already imported the geometry. You can view it. You can see that it has both elements and members, 1D and 2D. There's no 3D objects in this model. You can also see that it's been imported in meters. So even though my Rhino is set to millimeters, the scale of this model is in meters. I can change this by clicking the drop down, centimeters for instance, or you can import in millimeters also. This will then scale it accordingly. By default, when I drag a new component onto the canvas, GSA Grasshopper will use the default units, which you can change from up here. So if you go to the Oasys tab here, go to Oasys units, you should see this window here. Here you can set your preferred units. You can toggle between some standard ones, and you can also decide to use Rhino units. This will automatically pick up the units that you have. But these values will only be used for, or these settings will only be used for new components that you drag onto the canvas. So if you have already picked that this model is going to be in millimeters, and you reopen this model with different settings, it will keep the settings. We can, when we import a model, we can use these filters. So we can use element list filters and member list filters, as we know them from GSA. So if I only want to import member number 1, I can input a list with or a string with 1 or 1, 2, not 4, not 3. Or we can say PB1 to PB3. So this will import like this, the selected. This terminology you can see in GSA as well. It works in the same way. So I happen to have the GSA file open. If I can find it, here we go. So this is the same model open in GSA. So if I go to members, let's say PB1 to PB3, you can see that those are the same as in GSA, in Grasshopper. Then the output from this component are these different parameters. So we have the node parameters. That's all the nodes in the model. We have element 1D. Those are all the element 1Ds. Element 2Ds, they are a bit, they work a bit differently than the ones in GSA. So we can see here, if we hover over the input, there's only 3 element 2Ds, but we can see that there's a lot of E's in there. There's 574 in the first one, 288 in the second one, and 87 in the third one. And this is because we are automatically grouping them. So we can use item here to filter out. So if we just look at them one by one, I'm gonna hide this and hide this. So this is the first one. So you can see we've grouped them. So in GSA, each of the faces here would be a 2D element, but we've grouped them into connected pieces with the same properties. And just for consistency, I'm just going to show the 2 other ones. So, oops, the second one is that one, and the third one is the little slice in the middle. So, you can highlight it here. 1, 2, 3. Yes, if we go back to the GSA model, we can see that we have now imported the nodes, we have imported the members and the elements, and this model of course also contains other metadata like section properties and 2D properties. So if we go into the section properties library here, we can see we have PB1, PB2, PB3, then we have a gap, PB11, PB12, PB13. So if we try import this in GSA Grasshopper, we can go up to the model tab again. We can find get model properties. Again, that asks for a GSA input, and we can see here that it's imported PBs, PAs. Those are area properties, so 2D properties, and PVs. There are none of those, but those are volumetric properties, so 3D properties. If I just grab a panel and input them here so I can have a view at them, you can see that we have sections 1, 2, 3. I can see the profile and the material. I can see it's PB1, PB2, PB3, 11, 12, 13. If I want to look a little bit more into this, say I want to grab the PB, the integer, or I want to take the profile, for instance, I can use the edit components. So I go over here on the properties tab now, then go down to edit section, drag that in. these edit components, they work as so-called pass-through components. So I can input something here, and then I can use the right-hand side to look at what's already in that property. So for instance, I can have a look at the IDs. So here we have the 1, 2, 3, 11, 12, 13 replicated. Can also look at the profile. I get the profile string. If I wanted to say edit the ID, so say I wanted to make PB1 instead PB4, I could input a new ID here, and that would then overwrite the ID. So if I do that quickly, I can say I take PB1, the first one in the list. You can see that's PB1. It has the ID of 1, and if I say I wanted to make that number 4, I could simply input that there, and then it will get get the ID 4, and this will now, the description has now changed to PB4. This only exists inside Grasshopper at the moment, so we opened up the model inside Grasshopper's memory, so there will be no direct change to our file before we save it. That was a quick introduction to the GSA Grasshopper plugin, an overview of the ribbon, and a quick intro to the parameters.